to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Ron McCall.
And I'm Scott Nichols.
Well, what's up, man?
Not much, just hanging out here doing podcast thing.
Well, that's a lot better than, doing housework or yard work or anything with the word work in it.
Yes, I agree. I mean, we don't get paid for this, but at least it's something that I enjoy doing. So
that's true.
I mean, I enjoy doing my job too, so that's a good thing, right? But I haven't reached that point where I don't work a day in my life. That from that saying, right? If you do something that you love, so you won't work a day in your life. Well, I'm still working, but I do like my work. So
yeah, liking your job does play a factor in, again, job satisfaction. One of my more recent classes was on work counseling, how to help people, match their personality with the job that they do.
right.
And, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? Trying to have more of a life by design rather than life by default kind of concept.
I like to go to the beach, theme parks, travel. As soon as I can figure out how to make money doing all that.
I mean, it's called being a tour guide.
I'm on it.
Be a tour guide.
Yeah, but you don't get to like travel as a tour guide necessarily. So you tour guide in one place for a lot of the time. I mean, that's what most people do.
My cousin, they don't listen to podcasts, but they run a travel agency. They took us to Alaska. They're taking us to Hawaii. I mean, they take you to. Did they pay for it? No, okay. We got paid for ourselves, but they go along and make sure that the trip, they kind of work, but they get to go on all the different things that we do.
I want to actually go on the trip and get paid to go on the trip and have somebody else pay for the whole trip as well, right? Like get to do it all for free. That's what I want. But and we all want dreams. I mean,
yeah, I don't think they paid for their trip to Alaska.
Maybe they didn't.
I think we help pay for it.
Sometimes I don't pay for my trips because I have miles on airlines or things like that, right?
Okay.
But that's because I paid somewhere else and some other time. Nothing's free, so I'm living a pipe dream. That's all.
Well, I'll tell you, I saw this at a professional conference, and I share it with the kids all the time. You can either work now and play later, or you can play now and work later. Either way, you still got to work.
Right. So I'm just chasing that dream of like, if you do what you love, then you never work at all. Right. I just think maybe that's a saying that doesn't pan out. But I mean, I think all that comes from my own life experience in that when I was a kid, I always saw, we didn't grow up especially wealthy by any means. And so, my parents tried to do what they could. We went camping a lot or things like that, stuff that wasn't very far away. And so like in the elementary school years and middle school years, for the most part, we would have breaks, spring break or up north, we called it winter break. There was winter break in February, and then there was a spring break or an April break.
Okay.
And then, because we went to school till almost July. So, the different breaks or the summer, right, kids would come back and they'd be like, so what'd you do during break, right? And I didn't want to be like, I rode my bike down to Ames department store, which for those of you wondering what that is, it's long gone. I get you. The other kids were, I went to California. I went to Colorado and went skiing. I went to Disney World. We went to, they would go all over the place. And I was like, why the heck can't we go these places? And I think so. I think that like my desire to travel all the time kind of comes from the fact that I didn't get to.
Well, to piggyback on that, we were the same way. My dad worked. My mom was able to be a stay-at-home mom, but she worked her tail end off as a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, same thing. Whenever we would have school breaks, people go everywhere. And I'd say, oh, well, I'm going to go to LA.
Right.
Well, that was the Lawrence area. Or, hey, we're going to go to D.C. for our break. Well, that was Douglas County. And so tried, but yeah, same thing. We didn't go a lot of places. We didn't have big fancy vacations.
Right.
We would do camping. We would, mom and dad made sure we would have a family vacation, but a lot of times it was traveling to go see family. And we would make pit stops at this place or that place along the way. But for the most part, we were headed to go see family somewhere.
So I think that's interesting, right? Because my wife has the same similar experience. And so we've long been all about this idea that travel is more important than material things.
Yeah.
And I think that just comes from our childhood.
That's interesting you say about travel, because when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of extra money. Parents made us, you want it, go earn it.
Right.
I would pick up recycled aluminum cans. I would walk the highways.
Sure.
And pick up aluminum cans and take them down to recycle and get money that way. Or we would have chores that we would do, and we would get paid. Well, my dad got paid every other week, so our allowance was every other week.
Right.
And so they always said, look, if you want money, well, you've got to earn money. We're not just going to give you money, and we're not just going to buy you stuff. And so actually, yeah, I know. And so I actually, as I got older, I chased money.
Yes.
And I found that was very unsuccessful, because it didn't bring me happiness.
No?
Yeah, surprise, Can't Buy Me Love. Not just a Beatles song.
But money, money buys you travel. So
well, that is true.
I find some happiness in the travel piece of it. I'm not all about necessarily the accumulating large amounts of things. And my living space isn't really big enough for me to do that anyway. But I do. Don't get me wrong. I love to buy stuff. My wife is the frugal one. I am the overspender.
Yeah.
But there's nothing greater than just like a few weeks back when we decided to go to California for the weekend.
Yeah.
And just be able to go to Disneyland and explore some areas in Southern California that I've never been to, and she's never been to, and we got to explore that together. And those are the memories that last, right?
Well, and
what I think is interesting as well is that we pass this on to our kids. So while we had an experience that was more like, we didn't get to travel, so now we value traveling much more.
Yeah.
Our kids, we got them to places, and we did a little bit of traveling, more than I did as a kid. And now that's a positive experience for them. And now they crave traveling just as much, or maybe even more than we do.
Okay.
So it's interesting, like whether it's a negative view on that experience in childhood or a positive one, it can actually have the same effect.
Well,
which is interesting.
I'm glad you brought that up, because today I was hoping we could talk about how our childhood experiences influence our personality and influence our personality development.
Okay.
And because a lot of times, and I had a fun conversation or debate discussion in one of my classes here not too long ago on the idea of nature versus nurture.
Okay.
And in this the article I'm going to refer to came from That Psych Nerd, and it was titled "Childhood Behavior May Explain Personality Development." So that's where this is coming from. And in there, in the article, but also in my class, how much of our personality is based on our biological origins and our, how shall we say, our environmental influences.
I think that's like an age-old.
Yeah, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
I think back to the old the old movie, the early '80s of Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, right?
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd. And the test there was, can you, if you put this person who's a homeless person in a different situation, do they act different?
Yeah.
Do they do better? Do they produce? And what happens to the person who was in the great situation that's now in the homeless situation? Does it? And it's very interesting that environment piece. How does that affect us?
Well, I am more of the mind that the environment plays a much larger role in shaping our personality. And I think there's a lot more science that goes into the idea that our environment can play a much better role in helping shape our personality than our biological beginnings.
Well, I think that's definitely true, right? Like we teach, and because we're government teachers, right? We teach about political socialization. But if you think of socialization in general, leave politics out of it, which is always a good thing to do in this country. Right. If you want to get along with people, we can just leave the politics aside for the moment and think about just the socialization piece of that. And I am not a psych major. I don't know these things, but if I just think about it as an average person, and I think about a baby is born, and you're not automatically born believing a certain way or necessarily acting a certain way, right? Babies learn by mimicking what other people are doing. And I think that progresses all the way through like teen years and into maybe even up to 25 years old. As they say that around 25 is when your brain is like fully matured. And I've even seen some studies that say 27. I don't know when it is.
Right. No, most that I have read is 25.
Right. Regardless of that, it's we as humans tend to mimic other people.
Yeah.
And that's how we learn. That's how you learn language.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you learn how to act in certain situations. If you are put at a table and you have certain setup of silverware, and you know which ones to use, like you always do that. So we definitely do learn things from whatever environment we're in.
No, and I think that's kind of what they're saying here with this article, which is maybe it feeds to my predisposed beliefs, but the idea that things that happen, in our early childhood life has a traumatic influence on how we are as an adult. And, like I said,
a traumatic or a dramatic?
It can be either.
Okay.
It can be something traumatic. It could be, oh, cried out loud, a tornado come through and wipe out your house.
Sure.
Or it could be something as traumatic as a divorce, or the death of a parent.
Okay.
I mean, those are highly traumatic events, and you can actually see, that makes sense that they would have a huge impact on us. But it could also be something as dramatic as, okay, one of your parents is in the military and you're having to move around a lot. And you move all over the country, all over the world, and every, 12, 18 months, you're having to move to a different town, a different state, a different country. And so you're uprooting and having to live in different homes, make new friends, all of that. And that could influence me either being extremely outgoing or extremely more introverted.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. In my childhood, would have preferred that my parents would just move, right? That we would go somewhere else. That I wasn't crazy about where we lived because I wanted to travel. I wanted to go experience other places. So something like moving around as a military family would have appealed to me, though I never got to experience it. So I don't know what the effects of that is, on a person. But it's still. That would have sounded exciting to me. But of course, I was in a situation where, as a kid, elementary and middle school, I wasn't especially popular, and in fact, I was on that end of receiving some of the bullying. Yeah, and I would have given anything to have different friends at that time. Now, granted, a lot of those people that were involved in that, I am actually friends with today, but and probably was in high school to some extent as things got better. That kind of thing, especially the bullying aspect when you're a kid, right?
Well,
that can really shut you down.
And that bullying can be seen as a traumatic event.
Right.
And I mean, and that's kind of what they're saying, because even the Kaiser Permanente back along with the CDC, they did a study back in 1999. Actually, it's been a long time, called the Adverse Childhood Experience study, and I use that a lot in explaining how high conflict divorce can have a negative influence on a child.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of this. So again, traumatic events, like you're saying about being bullied. It has nothing to do with mom and dad moving around. It has nothing to do with your economic status. It just has to do with that you were bullied as a kid. And that has a huge impact on helping shape your personality as an adult. And that's, and I don't know that many times we consider, how did we get to be where we are? Why are we the way we are? Why do we value what we value? And that's why I like this particular article, is that in understanding how we got to who we are, we can then decide, do we want to stay who we are, or do we want to try and pivot to something different? I mean, if you're not happy with who you are, do you have to stay there?
I mean, are you suggesting that I could change my personality?
I think that
I think that's difficult.
I think it is
even not possible at all. I mean, can I really go from being an introvert to becoming an extrovert? Is that a possibility?
I think it is a possibility.
Or is it just that I really need to be comfortable with the fact that I'm an introvert or an extrovert?
I think it can be a little bit of both. And the reason why I say this, when I was growing up, I was afraid of my own shadow.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody had told me,
I might have been afraid of your shadow too.
Well, I was a tall,
especially
skinny,
if it was coming to bully me.
No, quite the opposite. I was on the receiving end of a ton of bullying activities growing up, because I was a tall, unathletic, geeky, gangly, uncoordinated kid.
Wow, were we twins?
Could have been separated at birth.
I often say to my wife, "Why? Look at the pictures of when we met."
Yeah,
and like, why did you want to date me?
Well, see, I couldn't even get girls to date me.
Clearly, it wasn't the visual.
Well, I could not. I had a hard time talking to people, let alone girls. And so, I was extremely shy, afraid to talk to people. And my only friends were other shy, geeky, uncoordinated, unathletic people like myself. And
we would have got along famous.
I bet we would have. And then I had my best friend growing up was as polar opposite from me as could be. He was semi-athletic. He was outgoing. Okay. He was charismatic, would talk to anybody and everybody.
Right.
And so I rode his coattails through high school. Even though I was a grade above him, I rode his coattails.
Well, that's great.
And I go off to college, and then I had nobody. I didn't have him there.
Okay.
And through a decided, decision on my part, I started thinking, well, how was he successful? And I started acting out, acting kind of like he would. And I was in a brand new environment where people did not know me. I had no history, no background, no nothing. And I made a conscious effort to take all those childhood experiences, all that bullying, all that kind of stuff. And I said, that's not going to be me anymore.
Okay.
And I began to be a little more gregarious, a little more outgoing, taking risks, and I started seeing immediate positive results. And because if somebody had told me when I was a senior in high school that I would be teaching school, I would be doing a podcast, that I would be, all over YouTube with all of my public speaking, that I would be traveling around the country talking to people in large groups, small groups, about, all about divorce and all the stuff that I talk about, I would say you're full of crap.
Yeah.
So, but it was all of these early childhood experiences that I was able to channel and change.
Right.
So I say that you don't have to be that. You can change, but is it easy? No. Do you probably needed some help?
So
potentially.
Is it really change, or is it just that you have, like, because of your childhood negative experiences, repressed what was your actual personality, and now that you are an adult and you've kind of put those things, so you like, not that you've gotten over some of those things that were negative, but you've moved past them to a point where they don't matter to you as much anymore. You don't look at them necessarily with pain, but with just an understanding of where you were. And so now you can kind of move past that and actually come into what is your actual personality.
Very possible. Entirely possible.
Again, I'm not a psych major, so I don't really know. Maybe somebody out there can email us at podcast.homesweethome@gmail.com, and they can give us some insight on that. That would be awesome. But it just seems to me that our personalities are what they are. I can think of times when in school, rather than shrink back because I was being bullied, I became kind of a class clown, right? Which is more of an extroverted kind of a thing. Messing around, making jokes, but that's a way to try to make friends, right? Try to get people to like you. So I can think of times when it's like that, and I can think of times when I kind of shrunk back. But when I got out of high school, it was more like I want to go do what I want to do, right? Sure. I met my wife. A year later we were married, and I was only 19. I knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't know I would become a teacher. I had a good job back then in IT. Yeah. I was confident about what I was doing, and it was a confidence that I never had when I was in public school.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of confidence either. I wasn't until much older.
I have way more confidence now than I ever had. So, and I think when I turned 40, I was like, screw it. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I don't really care what anybody else judges me on that,
Okay. Well, I think, but again, we go back to where did we begin? And I think our origins can play a huge role. We've talked a little bit about bullying. Well, why do bullies bully? And I think a lot of that is they have a lot of unresolved issues in their childhood that help it. Are they being bullied by older siblings? Were they bullied themselves? That's why they become a bully to make themselves feel better. I think that a lot of who we are is based on how we started, how we were as a little kid.
Absolutely.
I used to I was not a dog person. Hated dogs. Did not like them. Yeah. And it took me a long time to figure out why did I not like dogs. And it came down to when I was about 5 years old. One of the neighbors, their big old German Shepherd, got out and jumped all over me. I don't know that they bit me or attacked me, but may have even licked my face. But to me, it was a horrifically traumatic event.
Sure.
And I'm going, I hate dogs, I hate dogs, I hate dogs. And it took me a long time to realize why I hated dogs.
Right.
Now, I've gotten over that. And, of course, in marriage number one, we raised dogs. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
And I know people are listening and they're like, well, I trust my dog more than I trust humans. Because I've heard that many times.
But the idea that different experiences can influence our behaviors.
Right.
And now, and I guess the ones that can be most influential are those that are on the negative side. Um, these things that I don't know can make us less enjoyable to be around. Our anger issues,
Sure.
our trust issues, just how outgoing are we? Can be, we can kind of trace that back to our early life. And so, anyway, I mean, if you're having issues, getting a hold of a licensed therapist is fantastic. I mean, I know that's the field I'm headed into, but I have been seeing a therapist for 12 years, and I found that it has been super interesting for me to understand, to work through a lot of my own crap. And, because a lot of my issues are more traumatic related. I do suffer from PTSD and from depression as a consequence of issues directly related to my divorce. But through some of my feelings of insecurity that played a part in my early marriage, I go back to it. We traced it back to some of the things it experienced as a kid.
Right.
And not that I had a bad childhood, far from it. I was raised with two wonderful, loving parents. I have three sisters that were really great, except for when, they tied me to the tree and made me kiss the neighborhood, the girl next door, which, by the way, when you are 7 years old, that is highly traumatic.
Is it?
It was, or they would pin me down, sit on my stomach, put your hands over my head, and then they would hawk loogies in my face.
Oh my God.
No, that did not make me the person that I am today. But, so yeah, my sisters are listening.
It's like terrorism almost.
Well,
I'm sorry.
but those are just sibling kind of things.
Sure.
But like I said, I had a great childhood and a lot of great memories and experiences, and I don't know that I would trade it for anything because it made me who I am today.
Exactly.
And
I agree 100%. Even, those things I went through, that's who we are now. And I like who I am. Now, maybe there's people who don't necessarily like who they are.
Yeah.
Right. And that's fine. I 100% agree. I recommend to people all the time, you just need to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You need to talk to somebody who is trained in how to listen and how to respond and help you through your issues. And so I think that is so important. I mean, I am not a psychologist, a psych major. I'm just a person who went through some stuff in life and I hope has figured a little bit of it out. But when those things arise, I mean, you got to talk about it. You can't keep it inside because it will eat you up.
And that, too, can be part of how your personality developed. If you never addressed them, if you never dealt with it as a kid, as a teen, as a young adult, then as a full-blown adult, take a look, take a step backward and investigate. I mean, again, it's not bad parenting that it's not all one thing. And so as a result, I mean, now maybe it is bad parenting. I don't know. But I'm just saying that all of these things that we went through as a kid have an influence on us as an adult and shaping who we are and how we see and engage the world.
Exactly. And I don't think I have any more to add to that.
Okay.
I think maybe that's a good place to
put a pin in it.
To put a pin in it and say, if you need help,
find
it. Find it locally. Find that person you can talk to, or if you can't find something locally, go to an online source.
Telemed.
So many different options, and oftentimes insurance covers these topics, these services.
Amen.
So.
Well, then I'm going to take my childhood stories home and we'll call it a day.
All right, just don't repress them. Keep talking.
All right. Well, then until next time, I'm Rod.
And I'm Scott.
See ya.
Bye-bye.